Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Keeping You Wise by Keeping It Real, where we bring authentic and real conversations to fuel the soul that you can share with others. Welcome to our 10th episode, where we will discuss Voices of Valor, Veterans Chronicles. My name is Paula Bell, and unfortunately, my co-host Solo could not be here with me tonight, but we are going to continue on, and hopefully we will get to see him in our next episode. But before we jump into the topic for this month, I have a couple of disclaimers. We are not therapists and will not offer any medical advice. We are not trained, qualified, or able to diagnose or treat any form of mental illness or disorder. And some topics we discuss on KWKR may be triggering. The purpose of this video cast is to have real and authentic conversation that provides wisdom to us all. So please interact with us via the chat. We would love to hear your comments. And if you have any questions, post them in the chat as we may be able to answer them live. Now, these episodes go about 45 to 60 minutes. They are real laid back, where we are just open, honest, and authentic. These segments are currently being aired monthly, and we typically have guest speakers that will speak on a wide array of topics from mental health, self-improvement, entrepreneurship, career development, and more. So with that, let's jump in with who our special guests are today. One of these guests you've seen multiple times on KWKR, that is Janae James. For those who may be tuning in for the first time, Janae is a master life coach with a focus in guided meditation and goal setting. She grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, where she enlisted in the United States Air Force shortly after high school. Loving others and pushing them to be the best version of themselves through fitness and life coaching are her two main goals for everyone she encounters. She takes pride in her work and strives to be a positive example for others to follow. Janae's biggest achievements are her children. We also have joining us for the first time, Rudy Shepard. Rudy is a military vet. He served 8 years during the Afghanistan war and received 3 letters of commendation from the Admiral of the Navy, as well as the Navy Achievement Medal for outstanding work performance, in addition to 7 other military service medals. Rudy holds a bachelor's degree in information systems and cybersecurity and has spent over 10 years in the field of chemistry, becoming a professional perfumer and starting his own perfume line and candle company. So let's welcome Janae and Rudy to KWKR. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Rudy, are you there? I just want to make sure we can hear you before we go any further, because right now you're showing muted. So I just want to make sure you are there. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties, but are you with us? Maybe, kind of, sort of. Well, all right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yay.
Now we can hear you. Hello. Good to hear you. Good to hear you. Well, actually, let's go ahead and jump right in. And whoever wants to answer this first question, jump right in. But what inspired you to join the armed forces, and how did your journey in the service influence your personal and professional development?
I'll go first.
All right.
I decided to join because in high school, I was a part of a junior ROTC program. I had no idea what it was. I don't come from a strong background of family of veterans, of people who have served. But I just happened to be in 8th grade and saw some folks in what I now know as a formation, kind of walking around the parking lot. And I'm like, what is that? And so I asked my counselor about it. I signed up for it. And that very first day, I don't know, something just clicked and was like, yeah, this is it. And as the years went by, I graduated and I joined right out of high school. And it has been an amazing ride. But it's I wouldn't change it for the world.
What do you feel how has it influenced you personally and professionally?
Oh, it has definitely influenced how I think. It has given me opportunities to see other cultures, to interact and be surrounded by people different than myself and how I grew up. So it's broadened my perspective on how I attack situations and how I see situations and my problem solving as well. I think a lot of times, and this is not knocking anybody who stays in like their hometown for forever and ever, but
Mhm.
I've noticed that you have a wider perspective on things that are presented to you, regardless of what it is. It can be a work problem, it could be parenting, it could be whatever, just day-to-day life. And what I've noticed is that you're able to see it from different points of views when you have that that experience.
So problem solving, I'm just interested a little bit deeper from a problem solving perspective because you said it helped you problem solve. So how did you problem solve before versus how did you approach solving a problem before versus how do you approach solving a problem now?
Girl, I didn't.
Oh wow.
I didn't. I just kind of hoped it would go away. Just but I also either like just kind of hoped it would go away, or I would just kind of like bulldoze it. I would just kind of, it's like a
Mm,
bullheaded approach of no, this is what it is, instead of actually taking a step back and seeing a bigger picture of the issue. And it's not always like a problem as in like a negative way, but just any situation that has been presented to me. And my younger years, this is like, oh no, it'll be fine. I'll just go away, and I'm like, no, real naive. But but after having years, I've been in 18 years. After having um, this experience and everything that has been kind of like thrown at me, it has been building blocks for ways to approach different situations and being able to help others see it in different perspectives. So it's not helping just me, it's helping those that are coming, that I'm bringing up as I'm transitioning out. And it's helping them strengthen their skills as a supervisor, as a person, just as however they need it in life.
that's good because I do believe that having that new understanding, right, or method or logic of how to approach problems. And when you're in the armed forces, you just can't run away from problems. I'm sorry, you can try, but for what I've heard, I've never been, but I have a lot of family that has, and from what I've heard, you can't do that. You need to have strategy. You need to have something there to help with that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Well, look, it looks like we got Rudy back. You're a little bit dark there, but I'm gonna take anything I can get at this point because we
Can you guys hear me? You guys hear me
yes,
good?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good, good, good.
Good. Now we're together. Now we're together. So Rudy, let's go back really quick. Janae and I've been talking about what inspired her to join the armed forces and how did that journey influence her personal and professional development. So if I were to pose the same question to you, what inspired you to join?
Getting out of New York.
I understand. So for those who don't
um,
know, Rudy is my cousin. He is my family member. So
yep.
we have a background there. But yes,
Um,
getting out of New York.
but yeah, I mean, getting out of New York, I saw a lot of the people I grew up with heading in the same direction. Everybody was kind of doing the same thing, and I had a choice. I could either stay there and follow suit, end up another statistic, or do something different with my life. And for me, I thought number one, school was a little too expensive. I
Mm,
was, coming out of high school, going into college, it was a little too expensive there. And I thought, well, you know what? The military would be a good way for me to not only get the education I wanted to get, but to get some exposure and also get to travel the world. So for me, it was kind of like a win-win. I knew it was going to be a little challenging, but I thought like what, this is going to test and improve who I am as a man. Because as a young man, I really didn't know who I was at that time, as a teenager. So I figured this would be a good way for me to see who I am as a man and kind of develop some character.
And how did that influence your personal and professional development?
Oh, wow. It was a culture shock, because when I joined the military, I saw a lot of people I really didn't get to see in New York. So, outside of being in New York and traveling a couple of states here in America, the only place I've ever been outside of America was Barbados, which is where our family's from. Mm-hmm. And so getting to see, now don't get me wrong, New York has a plethora of culture and different backgrounds and ethnicities, but I was kind of like so far out of my element with the people I was around when I joined the military. It was weird. It felt awkward, and it was a major adjustment, but it taught me so much. Like I learned so much about people in general, and getting outside of the African American culture and seeing what it was like to really be around other cultures that wasn't like my own, and understand that just because they're different doesn't mean that they're bad.
Yes. So it's sort of like getting rid of your biases a little bit, in those judgments that you have based on the environment you grew up in or what you were exposed to. Getting that deeper exposure. I can appreciate that, especially with you traveling to so many different places. I can definitely appreciate that, because you get to experience other cultures and you get to see how others live. It gives you a deeper appreciation of your own culture, but also a deeper appreciation of others. So could each of you share with us tonight a significant memory or experience from your time in service that has stayed with you throughout your life, and how it shaped your perspective? And whoever wants to go first can go first.
Ladies first.
I was hoping he was going to go first on this one. Honestly, I would have to say the first time I deployed, it was like one of those things. So I joined at 17. So, and I think I was boots on ground by 19. And so I'm sitting here, and I'll never forget it, literally flying into Iraq. And it's just like, oh my God. Kind of like, what did I sign up for? This is real. You see it on the news, but you don't grasp it until you literally grasp it. Mm-hmm. And so to have that experience will definitely stay with me, I think, like forever. It was a huge eye opener. It was like that moment I had to put away childish things and immediately get it together.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I've heard of Rudy, you probably remember this. My first experience, I believe, with having a family member was in the military was with our Uncle Grantley. And I remember when I was younger, he was over in where was he? Where was
Iraq,
he?
I believe.
He was in Iraq too. Okay. And at one point, we didn't know if that man was alive or not. So when I heard all these of my cousins going into all different areas of the armed forces, I was trying to convince them not to. I'm not going to sit up here and lie to anybody, because that experience with my uncle caused me so much stress. When that war was going on, it was the Gulf War, right? When that war was going on, that thing caused me so much stress. I can't. I don't want to have to go through this with another family member. But how about you, Rudy? What was your time?
So many to choose. But here's what I say. So something that was very interesting for me was when I got to go, when I was deployed overseas, and I was in a mall. I'm not going to say where overseas, but a group of us, we were always told to travel in groups. A group of us went to a mall, and in the mall, now over here in America, we're what we see on the media is, America is great and these other countries that all pretty much third world countries, and everything
That's the one.
is just, you know, so terrible and horrible. And here in America, it's just peaches and cream. Of course, here in America, we know that's not the case, but that's how it's portrayed. And you develop this mindset that you almost start to think like, you know, these people, like they're kind of third world, so to speak. You almost kind of go there sometimes with the mindset like, oh, they're not technologically advanced, they're not that smart, and you know, all of these preconceived ideas you have based on what you're taught here. We went into a mall, a group of us, and we heard people just yelling, Americans, baby killers, Americans, go back. And it dawned on me at that point, like, wait a minute, we're not the heroes to other people that we're portrayed to be here. See, here in America, we're shown this idea that, you know, we go over to these other places and we bring order and we bring discipline and structure and democracy. And a lot of times in those places, it's more of you're bullies, or it's more of, you know, you're hypocrites. Because while you're trying to tell us how to live over here, we're seeing you demonstrate some of the same behavior in your own backyard. You know, we have a tendency to try to police other countries that that try to develop wars against cultures and ethnicities. But you have one brewing here in your own backyard. You have strife going on between Black people and the cops. You have issues developing between, you know, different parts of the Hispanic culture because of gang wars. It's a lot of that stuff that helped me to see, like, you know, again, going back to when I first joined, just because they're different doesn't mean that they're worse than we are. Just because they're different, those are people just like us. And I had to learn that, you know, because a person looks different than me, because their hair texture is different, because their skin color is a little bit different, doesn't mean they don't suffer like I do. Doesn't mean they don't deal with the same challenges that I do. It doesn't mean that, you know, they don't face some of the same economic turmoil or struggles that I do, not just as a Black man, but here in the country of America, because you got homeless people here just like you do in any other country, right? Even especially veterans who are sitting on streets, on corners, because they left protecting or you know, fighting for their country, fighting for freedoms for their country, and came back and didn't get the proper care that they needed. Right? They came back and no one taught them how to deal with what they experienced in those places. So for me, you know, I'm not gonna make it long, but for me, like, those things just kind of changed my perspective on how I looked at things. And I'm not saying that to say like I hate America. I don't. America is a great country, but we're not necessarily the cream of the crop. We're not this perfect society of people where everybody else in other countries just depend on us or even need us. That's just not the case.
Well, all right. So look, Janae, I was watching your facial expressions, your body language with a lot of what Rudy was saying, and it seems like you were agreeing. So would you say that's been your experience too, as you look at going to other areas of the world and seeing how others live versus how we live? And I also do want to hit on, don't let me forget, you can answer this question first, but I do want to hit on the treatment of veterans when they are done serving as well. I want to hit on that from y'all perspective. But yes, how it seemed like you were resonating a little bit with Rudy there.
Yes, absolutely. So Rudy hit the nail on the head. You go over to other countries, obviously, I mean, by choice, because we all agreed. We raised our hand and said we're going to do this. But ultimately, we don't have a choice on where they send us. Let me put it that way. So you find yourself in a completely different country. and now you are the foreigner. And if you have never traveled before, if you have never been even down south, if you live up north, okay, it is a culture shock. And you're also dealing with language barriers. But what I have noticed is that the countries that I have visited, a lot of them are very accommodating. They just have I'm gonna say boundaries. They have boundaries, and they don't waver. This is what it is. If you're gonna be here, you will follow it. Period. There's no gray area. Either you follow it or you face the penalties. And one thing that I've noticed is that, certain countries overseas, they are those, you don't want to see those penalties. I'm gonna be straight up with you. The smallest infractions we would consider just petty are serious offenses over there. Like, you will go to jail if you flip somebody off. Real talk. You going to jail. So it's to have that culture shock is eye-opening. And you start to, like Rudy said, you start to see that not everything that I was told and everything on the news is quite accurate. Because I have actually met some very caring folks. And at the end of the day, the root of what I have noticed is that families are just trying to protect their families. They're just trying to live. It's not about oh, my country's better than yours, your country sucks. None of that. It is, I got a family, I have a whole job, I'm minding my business, but yet here you come. It's the same narrative, but in different cultures. And I think if more people start to realize that, we'll understand people on a deeper level.
So you both talked about, and thank you for sharing that. And I love what you all are talking about, actually, because this is, people need to hear this. So you both talked about how essentially you're the foreigners going into others' lands, right? How do you prepare for that? How would you know that if I go to a country and I use a certain term or I do a certain hand gesture that I could be arrested? What type of preparation do you get for that so that you know what to do and what you shouldn't do when you enter into these territories? And Rudy, I don't know if you have maybe a virtual background on, but if you have, I think it's your virtual background that might be making you dark. Because when you move, sometimes the light shines.
Is that better?
Somewhat, yeah. It's better than the virtual background, but I just think it's the lighting in the room you're in. It's all good. We can hear you. You're fine. We'll go with it. But back to the topic at hand. How do you get prepared so that you know what's appropriate and what's not?
Well, I know for me, every time I've gotten deployed, we've had briefings. We would have briefings, and they would go over the do's and don'ts of being in a foreign country, and that's every country we've been to, from England to Spain to Italy to Japan to Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, you name it. Germany, all those places, they're do's and don'ts, as Janae stated. And yeah, you really don't want to go over there and do stupid stuff. I mean, because we see here in the culture with our young people, they go to school and they're like tyrants. They're talking back to the teachers and they're acting rude and disrespectful. Try doing that in some of these other countries. You want to be disrespectful to any type of authoritative figure. You just don't want to do that. Like that's not what you want when you
Mm-hmm.
go to these places. And so, it's those are things that you're taught. Of course, simple things like some of the things that you would get in trouble for here, like drugs, which you in the military, you shouldn't even be thinking that route anyway. But even things when it comes to alcohol, some countries you go into, you can't just drink anytime you want. There's some limitations on when you can drink,
Mm.
how much you can drink. Like, I mean, they're just different rules depending on where you go, and you can't use ignorance as an excuse. Like, say, well, I didn't know, so no, that's just not going to fly. As Janae stated before, that's not going to fly in a lot of those countries because they have zero tolerance. They don't tolerate from their own people. They're not going to tolerate it from somebody else coming in from a foreign land. That's just how it goes.
That's real. That's real.
Wow. Well, I have a lot to say on the disrespect here, but that's another podcast. So,
Oh, but you stay away from the news too. Just turn the news off.
while you're
Before you go,
Okay.
turn the news off. And absolutely while you're there too. I mean, well, okay, I'll say this. As technology has grown over the decades, because when I first started out, I mean, we just got webcams and Wi-Fi was barely a thing. So actually there was no Wi-Fi. It was Ethernet, but that's beside the case. You stay away from the news because it's going to distract you, and you tell your family members to stay away from the news because you can't tell them where you're at specifically. And so when they hear something, they see a headline somewhere, and they're like, oh, my baby, oh, my husband, my wife is, and then they're going crazy. And that's just not what you want. It's adding unnecessary stress on your family unit, your support system, and you ultimately, and you're over there having to do a job. So between the briefings and staying away from the news, it'll do you wonders.
How do you do that though, y'all? How do you not tell your family where you're going to be and do all of that? And I know it's because you're protecting your energy, your space, your peace, your mindset, right? I understand that, and you're protecting the family, but that's got to be hard to not be able to communicate like that. Or maybe you're conditioned that way. Are you conditioned a certain way because when you go through boot camp and all that, are you conditioned with a certain mindset when you're in the service? Do they like recondition your brain?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah. I would say yes and no.
Go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, it's a yes and no. See, well, for me, even though I was in the Navy, I did a lot of my work with Marines. And so they have a whole different level of, mindset. Their mindset is on a whole different level than pretty much any other branch of service I've ever seen. Even though they're a department of the Navy, but even to this day, there are places that I've been, things that I've done that I still haven't even told my wife, because it's not just a matter of protecting yourself, but you protect them as well. Some things are just classified. So when you join the military, you couldn't get involved in classified stuff, and so in that case, you just don't say anything whatsoever. But even when it's non-classified, there's just sometimes when, like Janae said, you don't want them worrying, and you don't want to worry because you don't want to have to sit there and think about what's going through their head. If they're looking at the news and they're seeing something going on in this area, even though I might be in an area where my life could be in jeopardy, you really don't want them worrying about that. Because that does add more stress on you, and you can't focus. Your goal while you're overseas is to be able to focus, to make it back home to your family, right? I lost friends in the military, some of which mainly because they couldn't focus. I mean, I won't tell you what some of them did, but I mean, it was tough. It was really tough on a lot of people. And I don't mean people that I met when I joined the military. I mean, people that I actually grew up with, from where my father lived. people who joined after me and didn't make it back. And it was so hard. I saw how it tore communities apart because people couldn't understand, like, and it fostered hatred, because then people, they developed a dislike for a particular group of people because their loved one was gone. And they knew their loved one was in that particular area, even if those people had nothing to do with their loved one's, death. And so it's protection all the way around, not just for you, but for your family and for your mission. Because at the end of the day, you are, owned by the government, and you have a mission to do, and so you need to be able to stick to it.
Yep. This kind of sounds cold, but you have to learn to turn it off. Otherwise, your mental is going to be your biggest enemy.
Are you still able to turn it off today?
Yes.
Well, you're still active, so you're still. So I guess you haven't gotten to the point where you've exited yet. But Rudy, I know you've exited the service. Are you still able to be conditioned that way if need be?
It's crazy. You'd be surprised how things that you're taught and you're conditioned to do stick with you, no matter what. To this day, there's still habits that I have. I go out to eat and I still observe my surroundings. Everything. I could tell you who's around me, what they're wearing, every detail. I go into a restaurant and my family knows I never sit with my back to the door.
You better say that right there. I don't do that either. You better say that.
I mean, it's just certain things, I even teach my kids how to observe, people and mannerisms and all of that kind of stuff when they leave the house. And it sucks in a way because you almost feel like, oh my gosh, I feel isolated. I feel like I'm trapped sometimes because I can't, in my head, I feel like I can't just turn that off, because if I turn it off, that could be the difference between
life or death.
Right. But at the same time, you kind of don't want to live that way, because it's like, man, I just want to be free. I just want to live life and enjoy life. I don't want to have to be looking over my shoulder all the time. I don't want to feel like I'm observing this person and I don't like the way they're acting. Is there something suspicious going on with them? Especially in the climate we live in today in this country, where you have mass shootings happening all the time. Like that's crazy. But we're not a third world country, right? That's stuff you expect in other countries, but it's the same stuff that's happening here. So people can't even go to church and feel safe because they going up in the church, they going up in the movie theaters and stuff. So it's kind of like, yeah, you leave that environment over there, but you just to come home and you can't turn it off because you're dealing with some of the same stuff here.
Well, let's take that a step further. And I'm glad it's a great segue into another question that I wanted to ask is, how do you feel veterans are treated? And Janae, you can weigh into this too, because even though you're still active, I'm quite sure you interact with people who've left the service. But how do you feel that they are treated once they have left the service and they return home? And what are some of the challenges that you experience with that transition of going out of service and now coming back into the civilian life?
Mental health care.
Lack of?
Number one.
Lack of?
I mean, I have a friend right now who is really battling some demons, and she is not getting the help that she needs.
What are the barriers that are stopping her from getting the help that she needs?
The lack of empathy and care in VA hospitals. There is no nice way to put it. I've experienced some, but not to the degree. And I think it also depends on what location that you're in as well. But I can say that the lack of empathy and actual care for veterans in the VA healthcare system is severely overlooked.
I would have to agree with that 100%. Um, I don't I don't know if it's a lack of training, uh, if it's a lack of understanding, but there are people who come back and they're just not there mentally, right? And just to share a little bit of what I had to deal with when I came back. My wife had to, for years, had to watch me while I slept sometimes because I would have night tremors. She would have to wake me up out of my sleep and tell me relax, calm me down to go back to sleep, right? When I came out of the military, it took what seemed like forever just for me to get disability. And I'm thinking to myself, I have to have all this documentation, stuff that you guys did when I was in there. I have to have all that together. I have to be able to prove every single thing that I'm claiming happened in detail, and I have to have it documented. I fought for this country. Like I, I feel personally, anybody who's gone into the military and come back, they made it back alive. They deserve to be taken care of, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just medical and dental care. They at least deserve that. The fact that you billionaires and these $1 billion companies and corporations get to have all that they have and sit down and ride their luxurious yachts and all around the world and do all this stuff. The fact that you have athletes in this country making hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have politicians sitting up there in the White House who are enjoying their lives and they're fighting over a shutdown or not a shutdown, because it really doesn't matter to them, because they're not the ones that's going to be hurting if there's a shutdown, because they're still getting paid. The fact that you get to indulge in all of that stuff is because you have people willing to put their life on the line and go across the world and fight for you to have those freedoms, right? And the fact that they have to come back, you have veterans living on the street. Not everybody living on the streets because they're addicted to drugs or they addicted to alcohol. Some of them really just never got the mental help that they needed. I was fortunate enough to have family to support me when I got back. People I could turn to. Everybody doesn't have that. Right. And even those who do have family, a lot of their families don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. They don't know how to help their loved ones. And the VA just isn't doing enough to bridge the gap there. They're not. And I have to say VA hospital, because you have certain departments of the VA, they're doing all they can.
Yeah.
But they can only do but so much. They can't do it all. And they definitely need the help of the politicians. They need the help of communities. They need the help of even local doctors and stuff, local physicians, therapists. When they talk about it takes a village to raise somebody, it takes a village to take care of somebody when they've come back from war, or when they've come back from dealing with the stuff that you have to go through when you're in the military. It takes a lot. And some people just aren't willing to put in that time and that effort or the finances, and it sucks. It's terrible.
Because not only do you have whatever that veteran experienced while they were over there, they come back, and if they're lucky, their significant other is still with them, but that significant other is not strong enough, just being honest, is not strong enough or understood the assignment before their significant other left to fight for the country. So when they came back, they're like, oh, I didn't sign up for this. And then that's adding on to their stress. That's adding on to their mental health. That's adding on to, it's pushing them closer to the edge. This topic has to be talked about, but I absolutely hate to see what veterans go through when they come back. Is it all like doom and gloom? No. You do get some help. You do get people that are very supportive. Don't get me wrong, and I'm very grateful for those who do support veterans. But it has to be bigger. It has to be more. And honestly, it doesn't even always have to be throwing money at a situation. A lot of people literally do not care. They don't care because it doesn't personally affect them. And that's the problem.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you both for being that transparent and authentic, because I think people do need to hear that there's breaks in the system. And I do believe, not because I've had family in the different branches of the armed forces, but just because I'm human, you all are ultimately sacrificing your life. You literally don't know from day to day if you are going to live or die, right? You're in strange places you've never been before, potentially around in environments you've never been around before, trusting your fellow servicemen, servicewomen to help you get through it. It's a lot. And then to come back home and pretty much go through the same war again at home. Think about all that documentation you have to fill out. Come on now, that's got to be triggering. I got to tell you every little thing that I went through in order for me to get support. So you're making me relive what I just went through however long ago, right? And having to live through that. And yeah, the mental health is definitely real from a standpoint of the traumas that you see and the things that you have to face. And even if you're the one who has to go to a family and tell them their loved one is now no longer here with us, right? Having to go through all of that. So I can't even imagine. Now, mind you, I've went through things with my family, of course, you know, Rudy's being my family, and many of the cousins and uncles actually have been through the service, but it is a lot. It does weigh a lot on people. And so what advice would you give to someone then, as a spouse or a significant other or partner who has someone going into the service and they're coming back? What advice would you give? Because Janae, you made a really good point. I didn't sign up for this. Or you will hear people say, well, that's what you signed up for. I can't stand it when people say that. Well, that's what you signed up for. So live with it. So deal with it. Right. But what advice would you give to the ones who are here, who are supporting their loved ones when they leave and when they come back, from your own experiences? What's some piece of advice you would give?
Patience.
Okay.
You have to have an insurmountable amount of patience when dealing with someone who has just been in a war zone. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, you're going to get emotionally bled on. And you don't have to do a lot. Sometimes you just have to be there. Like, that person just really needs to feel that you're there and they're safe. A lot of it they can iron out on their own. A lot of it they have to iron out on their own with some help of therapy. I'm a big fan and advocate of therapy, but a lot of it they're going to have to actually do the work themselves. But they do need to feel like they have a support system that's not there to judge, that is literally there to say, you're safe here. I got you.
How about you, Rudy? What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with everything Janae just mentioned. That was actually key for me. With when I came back in, my family, my wife in particular, being here for me and helping me to transition from that environment to this one, helping me to see that, everything is not a war type of situation. Every person that looks suspicious might not necessarily be suspicious. That kind of stuff just helping me to readjust to normal living. Because I'll admit, at one point, like, it was OCD with me. Like, everything, even in my house, had to be structured a certain way. Like, and when I say OCD, I mean I had a bunch of DVDs, and they all had to be in a line, alphabetical, color coded, all that like everything had to be structured, because that's how I was trained. Everything had to be structured. It had to be in order. I had to make sure I could monitor everything. That does so much to you mentally when you see something out of order, and it's like, no, I got to fix this. This isn't right. Right. And I would go outside and I would see people doing things that I knew you couldn't do in other countries. You did things that seemed like it didn't show a very high level of discipline. And I would get agitated. I would get angry. I would want to go over there and say, "What are you doing?" And sometimes my wife had to look at me and be like, "You're not in the military anymore. You don't know them. Leave them alone." Right. And it takes time. Like Janae said, it takes time. It takes patience. And a lot of it I had to kind of work through on my own, but I had that person there by my side to help me. I didn't, I couldn't rely on the government to do that. If I had to rely on the government, unfortunately, and it has gotten a little better with the VA hospitals from where it was when I first got out. But back then, if I had to rely on the VA hospital or the government, I mean, I probably wouldn't even be here right now. I know plenty of people who took their own life just because they just couldn't deal with what was going on up here anymore. And that was an easier route to take than to sit and try to work through all of the turmoil going on in their head. And honestly, there were some times when the thought crossed my mind, because I felt like, well, my family, they'll get the life insurance maybe, or whatever. They'll be taken care of and stuff. And I don't have to deal with all of the pain and the pressure and all of the struggle and everything anymore. But again, my family helped me to see, like, life can turn around. Like, you can move past this. You can keep going on. You can get back to life normal. And while it might not be like how it used to be before I joined the military, it's livable. It's definitely better than it was when I first got out. Right. And there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And other people can experience that too, if they have people who are willing to be patient with them. And honestly, if we could just do better in our communities and taking care of our veterans, if communities, if we could have more programs, more outreaches to help our veterans. You have veterans coming back who did things like ordnance. So unless you coming out and you're working in the bomb squad or something like that, how does that necessarily translate to a job for you to work here in normal life? Right. You have people out there who are coming back and they have nothing to put their skills to. And so they fall apart. All of that stuff builds up stress. I mean, that's hard. It's hard. And then you get people who come back with injuries and they're prescribed pain medications, and then the pain medications become a crutch because now it helped them at the beginning, but then they've been taking it for so long, it's no longer helping. So now they're increasing it, and then they're adding other things to it to try to get out of their own head and to try to deal with everything that's going on around them, right? Because they have no support system. And then all of that, and the people who should be there to help them end up leaving them. They end up on the street because people don't want to be bothered with them. And it's like a domino effect. Things just start to spiral. It's like, what do you do now? What do you do at that point? And then what are we doing to help pull them back from that graveyard? Because at that point in their mind, they're thinking there's no more hope. There's nothing left for them. What are we doing to help pull them out of that? What are we doing to help prevent them get into that space to begin with? All of that stuff, if we had more outreach programs, more community involved events for veterans, we could avoid a lot of it. I'm not saying we can get rid of all of it, but
Right.
we could definitely improve on a lot of that stuff.
Wow. Well, again, thank you both for sharing your stories. Thank you for serving our country for my freedom and for many others. I don't take it lightly. Again, I swear like half of my family's been in the services. I feel like I'm a slacker because I didn't go. I had no intention. So I had no intention whatsoever. So I had made that decision very long ago. I was like, no, I'm good. I don't know if I have what it needs to withstand that, but many of my family members have, and there are many other families out here who have experienced the same. So if nobody else tells you, I'm going to tell you thank you. And let's keep advocating for the support that veterans and even active service women and men need, because even when you're active, you still need that support and whatnot. So if people want to stay in contact with you both, tell us a little bit about where they can find you.
Well,
Lady J, why don't you go? I was gonna let Lady J go first because I know Rudy, you're gonna give a whole spiel about your business. So
I love it.
we're gonna let you do that. We are going to let you do that. So, Lady J, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. Is probably the best. I'm probably the most active there. I have a YouTube and a TikTok as well. Love my morning motivations and life coaching. So if you want to keep in contact with me, you can reach me at Fit with Lady J on Instagram. Is your best bet. Hope
Awesome.
to see you there.
Yes, you're better than me because I do motivations 2 times a week. You be out there every day. So yes, if you need that dose of motivation to get your day going, definitely check out Lady J. All right, Rudy, tell us the phenomenal stuff you got going on. Where can people connect with you?
Well, I do most of my connections through my business, Sapphire Paradise. So you can reach me on social media, Sapphire Paradise, or on our website, www.sapphireparadise.com. I also have my own personal, social media outlets. But yeah, my business it's been my thing right now. It's been something to help keep me balanced. Talk about those communities and the help for veterans and stuff. This has been something that I get to put some of my knowledge and some of my passions and things that I've learned throughout my career. I get to put a lot of that stuff to use. And so being an entrepreneur, Paula, this, it was big for me. It's a big thing, something I'm teaching my kids to do. And so I just have a strong passion for this. So if you guys are out there, you're into perfumes, I'm a professional perfumer. That's how I started in my business. And I took that knowledge and started making candles. So all like the scents and stuff that we offer in all of our candles are my own creation, not scents you find anywhere else. So, if you're into that kind of stuff, lotions, sugar scrubs, all of that, home scenting and bath and body care, come check us out on our website. But more importantly, look for opportunities to help the veterans in your area. I promise you, there are veterans in just about every community out there. Look for opportunities to help them, whether it's a veteran-owned business like myself or just veterans who are trying to find their way. Look for ways to help them out and help the people who help you enjoy the freedoms that you enjoy.
100% agree. And I'm not saying this because he's my cousin, but I do have to say his candles are the bomb. So you know what's so bad? Rudy, your box of candles is right here. I have not taken them candles out that box yet because I don't want to burn them because they smell so good. But I know I'm supposed to burn them so that I could buy some more. I know. But those candles smell so good, and his packaging. It's like, so if your self-care is really important, we talked about mental health, right? So I intentionally do self-care days. And I'm telling you, if you like candles with your self-care day, his candles are worth it. And a lot of them also represent the different places he traveled on his military journey. So it has those sort of aromas and those scents that he remembers from when he traveled to those different places. So that's what I think is so awesome and unique about that. So make sure those out there who are watching live, or if you will be watching the recording of this particular podcast, please make sure to follow Lady J and support both of them in their endeavors. Definitely check out Sapphire Paradise. You won't be disappointed. It's the holiday season. It's a great time to give to those who have given to you. So a great time to reach out and do something great. As far as our social media, you can definitely follow Solo. Well, no, let me not even say Solo, because Solo will tell you the only place you're going to find him is here. So if you want to see Solo, you have to come to the podcast. But if you want to follow me, I'm all over social. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. You can find me all over the web. So make sure you do follow up. So that's a wrap. Janae and Rudy, stay with me once I do the outro. But we hope you have enjoyed this episode. I surely have. I appreciate the authenticity and the transparency. Thank you for engaging and listening. Make sure to keep the conversation going by subscribing to the channels that we talked about, turning on notifications to know when we go live. In addition, even if you're watching this after the fact, please leave comments, as we would love to hear from you. Remember, this is Solo saying, for each one, reach one, and teach one. When you know better, do better. And I think we were taught some things today. Now we know we need to do. So with that, that is a wrap. We will see you all next time. Again, Janae and Rudy stay with me afterwards, but have a great day, everyone.